So welcome, everyone. My name is Jennifer Scapitone. I teach in creative writing, English, Romance languages, and gender studies. And I'm here to welcome Tan Lin to Poem Present. If I had to venture a catchphrase for the sum of persistent erudition, pleasure, and brisk of Tan Lin's oeuvre, I'd say he's a Proust of the 21st century, a Proust of the Snapchat epos. It was Lin that got me to thinking seriously about refuse in the era of the landfill's downfall, despite the fact that his work comes across as radiant and lustrous. And here I have a stage direction to myself to show you these lustrous book covers, which are really quite beautiful. My favorite being this one. As he trashed the randomly sampled typescript pages he read from in a presentation at Berkeley sometime in the late 20th century from a manuscript he was calling Ambient Stylistics. Next, as I read Blip Soak 01, a 2003 A. Telos book in couplets strewn, bearing the digital artifacts of an inhabitable condition Rem Koolhaas dubbed junk space, verbal and numeric refuse from a rapidly obsolescing sequence of broadcasts, crossing the gutter in compositions that resolutely call out for reading as spreads, exceeding both page and cover. In Lin's rewriting, these throwaway oddments of discourse become apprehensible as precious bits of lyric and/or reassuring bathos, rarely failing in any case to surprise. Quote, "I am sleeping inside you, the chorus backwards, the ferns and tires leashed to a trust," unquote. New quote. "I love him or her with the batons of people curling," that's me crossing the gutter, "on a lawn. There I have called you between the day and night. There I have sandwiched the lovely toxins of the skin." Lin has been quietly experimenting with the form of the book as container, literally creating spaces of reading and of architecture, treating the book as a storage device, making obvious that the world we inhabit is itself a space of reading, radicalizing the modernist and Bakhtinian idea that advertisements, post-its, recipes, Netflix reviews, text messages, and code are part of the novel we live in. But if Lin is interested in trawling through the wastelands of discourse daily being churned, no one else has delivered so deafening a blow to the highbrow shock of the avant-garde launched by Eliot's poem, one of the topics treated in Lin's dissertation, and theorized by the culture industry-loathing Adorno. He's trashed their snobbery by appropriating soft, middle-brow forms of authorship and taking up originality as, quote, "the last remaining waste product of creative practice," unquote, as an original or sampled piece of Heath plagiarism Outsource declares, and tongue-in-cheekily dismissed literature and poetry above all, with their climaxing plot lines and revelatory synthetic bombast as, quote, "fundamentally false forms of excitation and dread," unquote. Against the difficulty pursued by modernists as well as the non-absorptive poetry of language writers, Lin transforms the book into a piece of very low-level durational energy, analogous to that of the media feeds it draws from as intravenously. In an essay first written a decade ago, I called what Lin was up to pseudo-complicity with the increasing total mediation and administration of space as it maneuvers to transform the book into, quote, "a non-branded reading environment." Lin has been interested in unoriginality for years, but is steered clear of any swaggering tactics of killing off authorship that ultimately prop up the conceptualist as hero. Instead, he's been exploring the distribution of authorship within and as a network. Heath, Plagiarism, Outsource, a series of publications taking place, as far as I can trace, between 2007 and 2014, unless it's still ongoing, which is always possible in this case. An amassment of material that congeals around the death of Heath Ledger and its registration in Twitter and RSS feeds, for example, commemorates the outsourcing of authorship, turning textual production into a collective act of recording and skimming, and ultimately of mourning. Lin's is one of the most, I have to just show you this because accidentally it started transcribing what I was saying. And I feel like this is the perfect candidate for adding to Heath, Plagiarism, Outsource, the way that he's been putting it together. Lin's is one of the most pointed engagements, even confessions, of the fact that writing in the social network has become indistinguishable from self-marketing that I can identify in the contemporary literary landscape, and ultimately celebrates the fact that reading in the age of digital reproduction is not dead, but becomes its own species of author function, and active trawling in the age of digital subscriptions and followers. Lin quietly but impactfully curates an ecology of textual and affective production, distribution, and consumption, exploring the fact that we are all liminal authors of events such as the death of Heath Ledger. Reading in these instances of participatory grieving or celebration drawn out by the dilation of the book form becomes not only salvage, but salve, if not salvation. The manifesto-like movements in Lin's works might lead us to think they are anodyne, but they occupy the contemporary in what are ultimately critical and melancholic ways. His second book, for example, pulls off the considerable achievement of a paradox, enabling us to imagine being soaked in a blip, a short, high-pitched sound and point of light made by an electronic device, or a minor, temporary deviation from a trend. On the narrative surface, his works may proclaim their soothingness, but one only has to contemplate being subjected to a 325-page blip to understand their cutting capacity. Moreover, while Lin is eager to state that the works are sampled and not composed, the insider scoop in the form of the typesetter of Blipsoak01, who will remain unnamed, revealed to me recently in an unrelated conversation that I had to retypeset at least 3 times because he kept completely rewriting the text. And it was hard to typeset since he wanted text to bleed into the gutters. I just thought I'd offer you that special knowledge. This also reveals his experimentation with the book as container, a slippery genre that can at times be confused with an airport, as 7 Controlled Vocabularies brings out, and his forays into the production of durational reading experiences in other media, video, LCD, and theater, shown in places like the Ontological Hysteric Theater and the Whitney. Lin's Insomnia and the Ant from 2011, slated for reissue this year, is apparently his most conventional work if one takes it at face value. It calls out to be read in the tradition of Asian American immigration writing, a heritage story about a television binge-watching ant with a motel in Washington state. I know I'm going on too long here, so I'll just close with Lin's characteristic wit. When asked whether he had such an aunt, he answered, "No, but I did watch huge amounts of TV while growing up. I think of the TV set as a member of our family, like a mother, father, or imaginary aunt." No other author I know could so succinctly encapsulate the work of media in narratives of U.S. assimilation, or describe its oddly embodied form of heritage facture, recalling Paul Clay's Angel. For the fictive ant in question, quote, "TV is not a screen upon which remote images flicker or a metaphysical conduit for the selling of soap, but furniture that moves like a glacier through American life, picking up all sorts of magnetized debris and junk, which it affixes to the other side of the TV glass, like the rear view mirror in a pickup truck." Please help me welcome Tan Lin to Chicago.
Thank you, Jen. That was really nice. Thank you. It's really lovely to be here. I'm going to start off with a video. It's called 11-Minute Painting. I just did a little thing was it downstairs? Yes, downstairs with Chiku and Jessica, and we were talking about the relationship between image and text. So this is a little bit about that.
11-Minute Painting, Reading Module V.1, by Tan Lin, dub version. Aside, what are the forms of non-reading and what are the non-forms a reading might take? Poetry equals wallpaper, novel equals design object, text as ambient soundtrack. Duchamp wanted to create works of art that were non-retinal. It would be nice to create works of literature that didn't have to be read but could be looked at, like placemats. The most exasperating thing at a poetry reading is always the sound of a poet reading. The poem you are about to see, dub version, is executed in director and plays independently of any intuited reading, voice, practices. It takes place in real time, and like a feedback loop it is different each time it is played. The poem you are reading is in BW because BW is more soothing than color. Halfway through, a color randomizer has been utilized to provide a greater sense of visual permutation, change and pleasure. One word, then another, and finally a third follow each other in a kind of slow motion, time-lapse photography. B-side, poems to be looked at versus poems to be read versus paintings to be sequenced versus paintings to be sampled. Everything that is beautiful is a code for something that is already known. Nothing should be unknown. The program code you are watching generates 16.7 million different shades of color backgrounds. Some of these are suggestive. None of them functions in place of memory. Memory cannot be sequenced. Memory is usually non-designed. You are about to enter 3 rooms, mirror balls, roving wallpaper, disco, home furnishings, lifestyle, getting up, and having a drink. Of course, in some novelistic vein, sequencing is highly absorptive, and so at the subliminal i.e., non-designed level, the sequencing allows reading itself to become abstract, bracketed, hypnotic, and mesmerizing. The problem with most poetry, like most design and architecture, is that it is a little too bourgeois. For this reason, the poem should never be turned off. Like a thermostat, it should regulate the room's energies. This allows the piece to constantly erase itself. As we all know, poetry should aspire not to the condition of music but to the condition of relaxation and yoga. A lot of people think great poems should be memorized. As anyone who has ever read a poem will tell you, poems are most beautiful and least egotistical at the exact moment in which they are forgotten, like disco and other 4-on-the-floor productions. Each sequence or sentence, i.e., word set, runs 7.2 seconds or the amount of time it takes to pronounce each word, one word at a time. 7 is generally thought to be the number of things the human brain can readily remember. George Muller did pioneering studies on this, and his theory is called Muller's number 7. Hence, most phone numbers are 7 digits in length. 7.2 seconds is hopefully just long enough to get the reader-viewer into a groove. It might suggest a strobe light going off at timed intervals. The interval can be beautiful because the interval can be dubbed. Relaxation, like non-designed home decor, has no real bounds. It supplements that thing known as real life. That is why it is so pleasurable to read. Someone, I think, said the time for poems written with words and the era of reading poems with feelings in them is long gone. Today, no poem should be written to be read, and the best form of poetry would make all our feelings disappear the moment we were having them. This sequencing of events constitutes a code more uncrackable and soothing than anything we could actually see. Paintings to be read, poems to be looked at. A beautiful poem should rewrite itself one half word at a time, in predetermined intervals. With their numerous circuit boards, televisions and computers do this. Together, they enhance the micro-production and sequencing of feelings heretofore thought inaccessible, complex, or purely entropic. If all poems could just be codes projected onto a wall, those names, accessories, for things cancelling the wall would be more beautiful than anything we could feel. Nothing that is negative is simple. Everything that is artificial is related to everything else in the room. Poetry should aspire to the most synthetic forms, the colors or numbers around it, and the most synthetic forms are to be found in houses with rectilinear walls, hallways, and foyers. Each wall separates one space from another. Everything that can be divided is divided into its proper sequence, i.e., style, of ones and twos. Private spaces are over-elaborated and under-inhabited. Public spaces are under-elaborated and lack sufficient feedback. Things that are living versus things that are dead versus languor. For this reason, poetry ought to be replaced by the walls that surround it and doors that lead into empty rooms, kitchens and hypnosis. Poetry should be camouflaged into the feelings that the room is having, like drapes, silverware, or candlesticks. All painting should aspire to the condition of encyclopedias, sequencing and BW diagrams. Niagara Falls is just a kind of paint. What would it be like to look at a poem? It would be the most beautiful thing in the room that could stand to be looked at. It would be more beautiful than the thing itself. A beautiful poem is a poem that can be repeated over and over again. You are reading about a poem comprised of 1,000 wayward looks. Look, a beautiful poem is a painting that can be repeated over and over again. Repetition is the only thing that makes something more perfect than it already is. For this reason, there is always a gaze that does not reach inside the face I was looking at. That should be the gaze of poems that think they are paintings. Andy Warhol understood this, and he repeated the look of a painting every time he painted the same thing over and over and over and over. That is why he painted over the faces of photographs. Nothing is more beautiful than a face when it is repeated, like a word for makeup. Novels were the earliest form of photography known to the human retina. That is why books are rarely mistaken for paintings. Paintings, unlike words, die the minute they attach themselves to a wall. Someone else said, excitement is the only thing in the world that cannot be predicted. Figure 1. Figure 2. Niagara Falls is just a kind of paint. My name is Dorothy. Because we like to come to a given space of our choosing, everything we see tends to look like a diagram or flow chart, as if it were designed to produce comfort zones, trance passages, or look, here is a house, here are its binary coordinates. I was reading a story about the anti-actress Chloe Sevigny, who is the most chased after fashion trendsetter now because she's ugly beautiful, wears vintage prairie dresses one day and Yves Saint Laurent the next, and seems negligent and muse-like at the same time. She often claims not to know what she's wearing. Someone said, she moves around the room like an anti-cheerleader. She goes shopping in Hello Kitty underwear. She played a vapory Deb in the last days of disco and, in Boys Don't Cry, a trailer park girl who falls in love with a boy who's really a cross-dressing girl. She can make a beret look very recent, her publicist announced. She's trying to dissociate herself from fashion at the moment. When I think of Chloe Sevigny, I feel the code book wobbling on my retina. Someone said, anticipation is an interesting and difficult thing to produce. The ultimate lifestyle exercise for a home is its television. It produces error after error. If knowledge unlike pleasure takes place in the network, a poem should pursue itself in a set interval of time, i.e., the time allotted to it. The ideal interval is programmed, usually 3 or 7 or 12, and expands indefinitely. In that way all the words, like portraiture or shades of color, could be replaced by something that reminded one of a couplet, an integer, a television set, a phone number, or the revolving seasons. If one doesn't have a television set, it is necessary to make one. It is now spring or it is now autumn when you read this. The temperature is the same across all 3 screens. Somewhere it is summer and I am losing someone because she is already gone. The television set is sitting on the windowsill. It resembles a canvas. These are the feelings television has, and these are the ways we make our feelings disappear into them, like small pieces of ice. The best paintings, like poems, make our feelings evaporate at a constant rate like a disco, which is nothing but a rotating system of words masquerading as numbers. I think it is snowing, and I worry that the guests will be late. I flick on the screens. This is an election year, of course. How to incite the idea of reading without reading? How to accessorize reading as a practice similar to entertaining? One comes in, then one goes. One adds something and then one subtracts something else. The most precious commodity in modern life is time. I live in a house like a series of loops, plus signs.
So that was a piece I did again for a museum, and one of the things that I thought about was, well, how can you get someone in a museum to actually read the text? And so I found that the best way to do that was to put a stopwatch on the text. So if you say, oh, a sentence is only going to last, well, and it was parsed by sentence and also by word, and then you have this sort of silly little plug-in graphic that was designed for MS Word on a Mac platform. So it's just a little bit of bogus programming. But it does give a visual representation, and it suggests that sort of parsing of language can be done in a number of different ways. And once you start counting words or counting off the time, incites a sort of urgency to the reading, or so I thought. All right. I'm going to read a few things from, I'm going to read some things from 7 Controlled Vocabularies and Obituary 2004, The Joy of Cooking. And people ask me why I gave it so many titles. And it was basically to increase Google hits. So I did include a lot of sort of semi or quasi-autobiographical material. And I guess the idea here was there's so much textual production that touches on living in an administered life world. And there's not too much freedom, but there's just a little bit of freedom that can be garnered out of that. And so I saw a sort of autobiographical potential in writing restaurant reviews, things like that. So this is a restaurant review. It's a restaurant review of a restaurant called WD50. It's known for its conceptual food. So it seems appropriate for poetry. It's called RPT MC60 00.278. What is the relation between a fruit and a vegetable? A book transpires one letter and then one word at a time, and nothing about reading can prevent this from happening. For this reason, books are best diluted or read over a good many years. Only things that are consumed endure beyond their shelf life. Nothing is really very different if you say it is. I had dinner yesterday at WD50, which is a restaurant located where the new Fukienese area of Chinatown and the old pickle shops of the defunct Lower East Side almost come into alignment. The restaurant is located at 50 Clinton Street, and it has a post-craftsman style decor with bulbous glass lamps that look like fluorescent flower bulbs. The chef's name is Wiley Dufresne. He is young and he looks like a cowboy reincarnated as a skateboarder. His father Dewey is also a chef. WD50 is probably the only restaurant in Manhattan that makes you hallucinate the food you are eating while you are eating it. The food can be unfood-like. I ate at the restaurant a few nights ago, and afterwards my taste buds felt incongruous and ecstatic. I remember seeing something on another table that looked like dessert, and I ordered it. A few moments later, there were bonbon-sized bits of pineapple on a plate. They had been soaked in something briny and had become pickles. Off to one side of the fruit was smeared what looked like hot fudge sauce, except that it was made of ketchup and jalapeno peppers. The sauce was semi-frozen. The sauce was hot and cold and hot. I couldn't tell which. I put the pineapple in my mouth, and it was like eating something that had been a vegetable. The chef had sprinkled some salt, scented with what looked like dour chips of limes. It was not really necessary to eat the food. One could breathe it. When I put all this in my mouth, I tasted so many things I forgot what was in my mouth. Eating a WD-50 is like reading Proust backwards. I looked over at a man at the table next to ours, and he had the face of a 6-year-old. The ideas of food erase the food itself and then become the food you did not think you were eating. Time passes inordinately, or not at all. What is it like to eat an idea or its suggestion? As anyone who has eaten can tell you, the most beautiful memories are memories that one has forgotten how to have. Eating a WD-50 is like having psychoanalysis with a starch, a sugar, or a fat. This is also from 7 Controlled Vocabularies. The best way to read a book like a building is to read it over and over again. The mechanical is a system of gradual connections between dependent terms. D and G said that. Reading should be no different. Nothing is not substitutable with something else. All templates exist simultaneously, thus making the history of a book a static diagram with its own uniform past and predicted future. Roland Barthes was wrong. Like a grocery list or an anecdote, the interior of a book can be read innumerable times without damaging the contents. Things that are obvious are the most obtuse. Things that are lacking in details are the most languorous. The more generic a book is, the more consumable and lugubrious are its diagrams. Like an index of meaningful moments, desire is about waiting for nothing. Cookbooks are the most empty diagrams of our lives. Reading a cookbook is an exercise in extreme loneliness. I remember when I first moved to New York to work for Viking Penguin as a poetry slush reader in 1979. I was 22 and had just graduated from college. I first lived in Riverdale on the couch of a college friend's sister, who was an editor at Newsweek, and her husband was a college physics professor and was about to run for a congressional seat in New Jersey. Because all of us were always at work, I hardly saw them during my stay, though I think we all once went on a picnic in Central Park to hear Pavarotti. They never said a word about how my apartment search was going. Because I was young, I really did not know how long not to stay, and so it took 2 months for me to excuse myself to a series of cheap hotels. First the George Washington on 23rd Street, and later the Pickwick Arms Hotel on 51st Street, where I settled in for 6 months. My room did not have a kitchen, but it did have a sink, for which I was grateful. The sink enabled me to keep my milk and yogurt iced for the night and to eat breakfast in the morning on my way out the door. Because there was no kitchen in my room, I usually ate dinner at Blimpie's or a Greek coffee shop on the corner of 2nd Avenue and 51st Street, and then came back to a hotel whose lobby and carpeted corridors were populated by bag ladies. Everything that I think about New York, the ease and difficulty and anonymity of its foods and its forms of shelter, led me to think how the city's intellectual and literary life, which I dreamed of, must also be anonymous and non-specialized, a blank form for all those things that I did not yet know. And in that way, everything that I wanted for myself was already formed and routinized in that short 7-month period, and would become something entirely different after that year. How many times can one change and still remain exactly who one was? I have never gone back to see whether the cheap hotel or the Greek coffee shop still stands on 51st Street and 2nd Avenue. What does it mean to no longer desire something like a Greek coffee shop? People fall in love with anecdotes all the time. Life is non-specialized or it ceases to exist. This is about a Chinese cookbook that I got when I was I don't know when. I got it at the Strand. It was 49 cents, so it was a bargain. Anyway, and I was learning how to cook Chinese food, and Yes, drink wine, I guess, at the same time. Later that year, or early in the next year, I bought my first Chinese cookbook, a cheap British penguin that I got for 48 cents on one of the metal outdoor carts at the Strand. This book had a picture of a huge pig carcass hanging from somewhere, which I did not like because I thought it gave Chinese people and Chinese food the appearance of modern-day primitives who keep pigs in their backyard and hang them from porches. I think differently now about that cover. And while I read this book in tandem with the Beard book, that's Theory and Practice of Good Cooking, one of my favorite cookbooks, I never cooked from it because the recipes did not seem at all Chinese. The language of cooking in Chinese in China and cooking in Chinese abroad were bipolar chapters that seemed to come abruptly, one from another century, one from another continent. Like most cookbooks, this two-in-one book was about repression and memory disorders. The language was arch, old-fashioned, colonial, and depressing because the English used to describe pressed ducks and soy sauce and stir-fry and soup and dumpling or tin wok seemed too nostalgic to actually eat a meal in. What is the use of language if you cannot consume it? The language of true Chinese cooking is very spare and very, very thin, just like a recipe or a very fine novel. To be able to eat in Chinese, you must also be able to cook in Chinese. To be able to cook in Chinese, you must be able to see the food first. There was no mention of what a scallion pancake looked like when it was fried, or what bean paste should taste like when it was fresh, uncooked. There was always so much irreconcilable information in a cookbook. As anyone who cooks can tell you, the longer a recipe, the more minuscule the finished dish will be. Yet I found in the book the most apt metaphor for Chinese food. In the first chapter on ingredients, the author remarks, "Cornstarch is the glue that holds all Chinese food together." When I told this to my mother, she just laughed and said, "Hoshubadao." I'm going to read a few poems that I like to give my students assignments. I don't know why. These are mostly constraint-driven assignments, and I do them myself too because I think I like to keep them company while they're doing this. And this poem is called Diary Blog. So the idea here was to use the personal pronoun you as often as you can. Because I found if you say you often enough, you start to fall in love with that person you. And I think that's a useful thing to do. So, anyway, this is called Diary Blog. Diary/blog. Oh, so if I stare at someone when I say you, it's not personal. Sorry. Where's Jen? You are a part of the incompleteness of my afternoon. The lessons of, the motivational speakers of, etc., come upstairs. They see me at my desk. They raise the oceans 1/2 of 3 degrees over a 20-year-old's life. They take coffee apart, like it's 2. The articulation, it comes apart too. A mother do this. A daughter do this. Everyone who is near me smells like anise. Nonetheless, I have been thinking about you at dinner. I mean eating dinner. Please see me on your phone. My speech is a little bit hard to make up. I think of myself as a restaurant in Chelsea that wakes up at 2 a.m. and goes to a restaurant in Chelsea. I do not need to look for tanning salons. I bruise myself. I get sick on envelopes. Saturday, you get married. The room I am constructing feels like alcohol in my head, which is decorated with conversations in fake Moroccan lamps, and everything is in it, even the glass dishes and candles, even the feet that belong to the feelings. They are painted red. Like you, this would seem unappetizing. In combinations, I have spent many evenings having tempura green beans and a bottle of a Côte de Rhône with you. In combinations, the restaurant is okay. Who are you? Tuesday. I know someone. Her name is Cheryl or Daryl, and she is an artist. I know Kmart is not nearby a lake. I know the pileated woodpecker in Winsong Cologne and aftershave for $7.99. I know the English fonts. I know Google because it has completed my attention. My attention knows my wives and former girlfriends. I and they and everyone I know likes to gather me around wooden-shaped things, like blankets or teeth sets or the occasional cockroach that are aromas in my bedrooms. What are the occasional things that are occasional in kitchens? Are you still so silk-like and/or sullen? Call me if you are not so bored as I am. Now and then, I don't like to see taxis at night, especially on 8th Avenue. Wednesday. I believe in my own obedience. Every star is an advertisement for another star. Every taxi is an advertisement for a bus. Cheryl is a television set made from wood and painted to look like you. You were here. You were talking to me in Japan. You were talking to me now. Then is now. I don't hear you anyway. I get tired because I am writing like a literary magazine at the annual American Book Association meeting or a snowstorm inside a blog. Oh. Yeah. That was an enjambment. I forced my students to use an enjambment. All I've done today is drink and read your emails. You forgot to sign your name. Cheryl, where are the planters and the screw gun that publishes itself on the internet every other year? Every other year it watches the TV. When I looked away, you had signed off without saying. Thursday. I write today is Monday or Tuesday. I receive an email from Harry and a big brown envelope stamped priority. On Friday, I tell you I want you, and I want you to know yourself. And I am very attracted to your eyelids and the minutes and the chairs that think they are volcanoes in your eyes. And I think you are standing between something I see and something I don't. But I don't really have the chair when this occurs. And you are yourself again and again and yesterday, and oh, too much comes into this. So this is another poem that I wrote, I asked my class to write. So this was done as a series of text messages. So this is sort of a phone poem assignment. And it's called Sent and Scented with 10 Emoticons for a Swan. You are a swan inside my afternoon. You are 2:50 p.m., a river, a plaid state. You are 2:51, a gymnasium, a lily. You are equals mint tea and chorizo hash. And I know your hair is red or not brown or not golden yellow and greater than salvia. Return the picture to me, a sweater coated with cuneiform. I wrote myself notes in the bathtub. And notes addressed your fleece and your math, delirium gargoyles and a trinket. I am she or he. I am cut in half. That means love is 11 dogs cried the color of reptiles, plus or minus the inside, then hurt and left. I am flying through temperature and a house has it, made for black. I am flying inside and I had an outside. I repeat a pattern in the tablecloth. Black is 4. He. I am so unvaried, and when I come to you. She. You are standing narrow in the straits. He. I rode a Lincoln and baked myself awake. She. I swam all summer indeterminately. Your oblong comets. You. Thumb velvet in an indentation of purring. At 2:53, all my faces. At 2:54, some articles of loathing. The Teflon in a river of beer. You are November. What is a year? Black and a few ellipses. Some sounds gone off in summer's powder. And this is a poem. I asked my students to use Wikipedia in any way to write a poem. So this is a Wikipedia poem. This is called Scaling unto Wikipedia. So I asked them when they did the Wikipedia thing to confine the Wikipedia search to a single letter. So this is, well, you'll figure it out. Scaling unto Wikipedia. Siblings start a harp in this ogled phylum, or Alice Veg subhead with a little oleander and punish. Because a spoon will crack today, award into symbol. Because it looked at yesterday and gown was a kind of trape's crockery partition in the pollen odes. On Tuesday, they notate and revile significant schlicht in you, doodling collagen. You, through chair, lift off. And so the names for mending, those sojourns, Romans. And on Monday, I read Wikipedia to the 9-year-old. Eckhard Schlicht is a German economist. He is best known for his work in labor economics, custom and economy, and his contributions to the field of institutional economics. Inside Monday, short division, and the sieve of Eratosthenes mean the same as shrinkage and shrinking. Mean I looked for you on my phone, and a little bit of somebody's gossamer reacts to a harbor in spam, and the New York is the drabness part of me asked for some stampeded sunshine, that the organization retracted, that sewed a pro forma bridge, that was plucked and oblong, like the tucking of your draperies, and you pissed Kitty Republic of print layout octagon and safari track model. Our sullen ratio meant we wept another television, like rice looker, like the rice that looks like us, like hair list, like missed the bus, like card, like ass, like the university mail system. Hatch with me, my paste is lilac, blah, la, la, blah, la, la. Thank you.